All right, Galaxy S7 Edge. This is going to be an honest review of this phone. Brand new here for 2016. My likes, my dislikes, all the good, bad, and the ugly of this brand new phone from the guys at Samsung. So stay tuned for a fanboy-free review here of this brand new Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge. All right, so jumping right in, the two things that totally stick out with looking at this phone right away. The always-on display here, it's configurable, it's customizable. You can change the clock settings, you can change the color on the background. Always on means that it's always on, so it's reading your clocks, your notifications, etc. Nice feature to have built into the phone. The other thing you notice right away is this super flashy silver titanium color option here. This thing is awesome. It reminds me of like a nice piece of chrome on a car, or a really, really awesome piece of silver jewelry, or a silver titanium bike frame. Just really fancy, really showy. Really like this color on this phone. Really stands out. Other thing is that jumps out right away is the 5.5-inch Super AMOLED display with the wraparound edge here design. Makes the phone really, really comfortable to hold on to. Really, really cool feeling in your hand. Very sexy. It sort of begs to be picked up. I mean, you see this phone sitting on the table and you're like, wow, that's really nice. I want to pick that up and touch it. That's kind of the draw here that Samsung has with this build. It's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because the fact that the screen does wrap around means that it is actually prone to accidental touches and clicks with your hand fat. And so when you're using this phone with one hand, especially when you're doing stuff like reaching across the screen, your hand actually has a tendency to touch the screen. So I think they control that a little bit with software, because I've noticed it being not as bad as it was with the Galaxy S6 Edge, but it does get in the way. The other feature that the Edge offers is this little Edge slide out utility here, which gives you options like stock quotes. Here's a ruler. Here's a quick access to certain applications based on your location. Like, so if you're home or whatever, you can customize the quick links here. Kind of nice to have. A little bit gimmicky in my opinion, if I say so myself. I don't really see myself using that feature very often, but it is kind of a nice feature to have. You can turn it off if you don't like it. You can move that edge slider to both sides and customize where it is. So if it's easier to use with one finger, makes it a little bit nicer to have that transitional space there. You can go, go this way or go this way or whatever. You can also customize the edge to have a nighttime bedside clock, which I think is probably one of the nicest features of it. So when the phone is sitting there charging at night, it actually reads the time down here, so you can see it really well when you're lying there in bed. Other great things about the screen, it's Super AMOLED, which means the colors are really, really sharp. They're really going to pop when you look at them. If we look at this on side by side next to a Nexus 5X here, we'll make sure the brightnesses are turned up on both of these guys. You can see that the colors on this phone, I'm going to say they look a little washed out, but that's not necessarily true. They're just a little bit more subdued, whereas the AMOLED screen is very bright. It pops. The blacks are very, very dark. The colors are very, very saturated. And so if you like that sort of thing, it's a great screen, great phone. If you don't really like that sort of thing, stick to a Nexus phone, or stick to an LG phone, or stick to an iPhone. They use the AMOLED, or excuse me, they use the IPS LCD displays. Getting into other features of the phone that I sort of like, I do very, very much like the fact that they've made the phone waterproof again. That's a great feature to have. They don't necessarily say you can go swimming with it, but it can withstand a dunk in the tub or in the toilet or in the shower. Another great feature is removable storage. They've added here micro SD slot, which is really, really nice. Qualcomm Snapdragon processor in the US version does have a tendency to get a little hot when you use this phone playing games, doing a lot of processor intensive tasks. It does feel warm in the hand, much, much more noticeably so than like a Nexus phone. It's primarily the 5X, and that might just be a compound of the build materials here. This is a glass and unibody construction, so it might just transfer the heat a little bit better than the plastic construction on the Nexus series. Getting into sort of the processor talk, the phone is very, very smooth, very fast, very fluid. Things open quickly. I'm not going to say it's a night and day huge difference between phones like the Nexus. We'll unlock both of these guys. We'll make sure we don't have any apps open, so we'll close everything here, right? We'll go here and we'll close it. No recently used apps here. So we'll go ahead and launch something like Google Earth. We'll make sure both of these phones are connected to Wi-Fi. They both are, so we'll turn that on. We'll go here and we'll launch Google Earth first. We'll wait for the Nexus to see if it connects to Wi-Fi. It should. Don't really know why it's not. Maybe that'll throw a hiccup into my plan here. It might, so what we'll do is we'll launch a game instead. So we'll launch Alto, which is a game. So we'll go here, and then you'll see The Samsung is quite a bit faster than the 5X in terms of its load speed. Again, I'm not going to say it's a huge difference, because what are we talking? We're talking maybe a half a second difference there, maybe a second at max. And so, you know, speed is relative, right? All these things like, oh, my phone has 29 gigahertz and 16 gigs of RAM. It's like, you know, if that doesn't really make a huge impact on your usability and your user experience here, it doesn't really matter what your phone has inside of it. Jumping into sort of the other things I like about the phone, the camera, I would call it good. I wouldn't say it's mind-blowing. In fact, I would say it's as good or a little bit better than the camera in the Nexus series of phones. At the end of this video, I'll show you some side-by-side pictures of this phone versus the iPhone, which you'll see more substantial results in side-by-side comparison-wise. But if you look at images of this phone, taken on this phone versus images taken on the Nexus, you'll notice it's not being that big of a difference. The Nexus phones have great cameras, but I will show you just two available light standalone shots here that I took just a few minutes ago. And you can kind of see the difference here. If I zoom in on both of these, you'll see that there's noticeable, the color is noticeably better on the Samsung than on the Nexus. It's much, the image itself is brighter, the image is sharper. If you look here versus here, right, you can see much more sharper image here than on the Nexus. And this Nexus camera is good. It's very, very good. And so the camera in the Galaxy, I would say, on the whole, is better than the Nexus, but it's not night and day better. You know, you're still getting a very good camera in the Nexus, but the camera in the Galaxy is in fact a bit better. Videos, on the other hand, I have a different tale to tell. The 60 frames per second video on this device loses focus often. It's very shaky. It's very wobbly. If you can see this at all, you can see that the focus will sort of fade in and out. There's a little bit of like glitchy, hiccupy things that happen in the 60 frames per second video on this Galaxy S7. Don't really know what that's about. I don't know if a software update will fix that, or if another version of the camera software will help, or operating system software, or if it's just the way the camera is going to be. So a little bit disappointed with the video quality of the 60 frames per second shooting on this. The standard 1080p is fine. It does have a 4K resolution on the camera, which is really cool to have. It does have sort of other bells and whistles and features and options. It's typical of Samsung with all their sort of stuff that they include, right? There's like, you know, 10 million different settings for the camera. There's like 10 million different modes here for different videos and photos, and you can download more. And, you know, I don't know, I get a little overwhelmed with this. I think it's cool to have, probably not going to use it. Most people probably aren't going to use it. If the iPhone's any indication of what people like to do, they like slow motion, they like panorama, and they like auto. And that's, you know, that's about it. So all this other crap is just, I call it just bloatware Samsung gimmick. Samsung, in my opinion, is sort of the king of gimmicks. And on that same gimmick tendency, we'll talk about the gimmicky software that's included with this. You know, I don't need two different mobile payment systems. I have Android Pay. That's the standard. Why do I also need Samsung Pay? I don't want Samsung Pay if I already have Android Pay, right? I don't want S Voice if I already have Google Now. I don't want, you know, Samsung S Health. In fact, I disabled S Health because I use Runkeeper. And so Samsung is just king. And also, I'll make a little asterisk here as well. Verizon is king of bloatware. And fortunately, for all of this bloatware, you can do things like disable it, right? And you go over here, you go to App Info, and then you go to Disable. Okay, and there's some things that you can't disable. See how disable's it's grayed out there? So that means I'm stuck with Verizon voicemail. I don't want Verizon voicemail. I use Hangouts for my voicemail, right? So I should be able to get rid of that, but unfortunately I can't. But fortunately, I can get rid of some stuff. I can go over here, okay, and I can go to disable on caller name ID, which I'm never, ever going to use. And while that does get it out of my face and out of my list of apps, it doesn't uninstall it from the phone, which is sort of a bummer. But it does remove it from my user experience, and you know, I'm not reminded of all the bloatware and junk that's held up on my phone. So now that we've got some Wi-Fi going here, I'll just launch one more thing here. So since this is an internet-enabled app, we'll just go ahead and launch Google Earth here to show you one more side-by-side speed test, and then we'll jump into some other topics here. So if I just double-click on, or if I click on the home button here to get to my app drawer, and then I find Google Earth, and I find Google Earth, we're just going to do this. Boom, to launch them. Oh, that at the same time, which I just did, you can see anyway, the Galaxy S7 is faster. So the S7 is probably one of the fastest Android phones on the market right now. Don't think otherwise. But if we're going to talk about sort of software and speed and user experience, my Nexus 5X is running Android N. Granted, it's a a developer preview of Android N, but that means that this new software is going to be released here very, very soon. And unfortunately, Samsung is one of the slower OEMs to sort of get around to updating their software. And so even though this phone is running Android 6 right now, which is current, it's going to be out of date here pretty soon as when Android N is released. And that's a sort of a bummer. If you want quick updates, if you want software that is released and immediately deployed to your phone, the Nexus series of phones or an iPhone is going to be sort of your choice to get the latest and greatest software. But aside from that, the phone is fluid, the phone is fast. I haven't noticed a whole lot of lag. I have noticed a little bit of lag. Yesterday when I was out using the Maps application, I did notice quite a bit of sort of keyboard search lag on the Maps app. And the Samsung fanboys will say, "Oh, that's Google's fault for not making the app right." Well, no, it's Android's fault. It's Samsung's fault. It's happening on Samsung. It's an Android and Samsung problem because the Samsungs have always been kings of lag. They've always lagged. I think they're going to always lag, regardless of what Samsung does. So what we've covered is sort of the basics here. Another few little things to talk about. Bottom facing speaker, it's okay. The sound quality is good, but it does have a tendency to get stuck in your hand. Front facing speakers I think are a little bit nicer. Yeah, you do have a standard stereo jack here. Micro USB, kind of a bummer. I would have liked to have seen USB-C on here, but whatever. Front facing camera has good resolution, good quality. The audio calling quality of the phone is great. I use Hangouts for my calls and data, and so I'm not a huge Verizon over the typical voice use there, so I can't really comment too much on the cell quality of the voice calls. But the data connection has been reliable. The Wi-Fi connection has been reliable. The build of the phone is fantastic. This, all in all, I have really, really high remarks for this phone. The only sort of huge negative I would like to say is the price. This thing demands a very, very premium price. I mean, we're talking $700 plus US dollars to get this phone off contract. And when you step back and you sort of put the hype aside and you put the Samsung marketing aside, what are you getting for your $700? And when you compare that to other top of the line phones like the iPhone 6S and 6S Plus, like the Nexus 6P, like the LG series, the G5, you sort of have to think about what you're getting for your money. You're getting a great phone. Don't get me wrong. You're getting a phone that's very, very close to perfect, in my opinion. If in order to make it 100% perfect, I think they should fix some of the software problems, like in the camera. They should make it so that the screen edge doesn't recognize touch when your finger's on here or whatever. So there's things on here that can be fixed. But when you compare that to I'm just going to use the Nexus here because I have it, and this would probably be more of a closer comparison with the Nexus 6P. But I've got a 5X here. You're talking about a phone that's almost half the price, right? This guy here is around $300. I think the Nexus 6P is around $500. So $500 for the 6P, $700 plus for the S7 Edge. That's a big difference, right? What are you getting for your extra money? Well, you're getting waterproof. Really, really good feature to have. You're getting expandable storage, removable storage. Also really good feature to have, but only if you use it. I never use removable storage. I don't carry movies and stuff on here, and if I do, I just plug it into my computer and drag and drop to the internal 32 gigs of storage. I don't need that extra storage. Some people do. Camera. You're getting a great camera, but you're getting an equally good camera in the Nexus series of phones. Okay. You're also getting the Samsung sort of realm of accessories, which isn't something that you should be taken lightly. They do make really great sort of VR gear for these phones now. Samsung has their line of Gear watches and stuff that sync to their Samsung phones. So the ecosystem, the accessories that go along with Samsung are something that some people really might enjoy. I personally don't. I think that, for me, I just want a phone that does the basics and does it well. So I prefer Nexus phones, but that doesn't mean this isn't a great phone. I really enjoy this phone. I really like it. I think that they've done a fantastic job here, sort of taking what the user has wanted. They've listened to their users. They've said, we want the waterproofing construction. We want better camera. We want more storage and removable storage. And they've listened to them and they've put it in. And they've made a fantastic phone in the process. So I hope you guys enjoy this honest review here. Don't forget to check out everything else I have on YouTube. Rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.